Welcome back to the For Cultural Purposes podcast. I'm your host, Shaun. We made it to episode 3, still not canceled. You love to see it. In segment 1, we're talking about the Met Gala. A friend asked me to offer my thoughts on what was an unquestionably and unapologetically black night in fashion and culture. I'm going to break it down through the lens of its history, the theme, dandyism and fine tailoring, and their connections to the black church, and something I like to call the clean your chicken theory. I promise I'll make it make sense. And in segment 2, we're diving into a hot topic. Merit. What do people really mean when they say merit? Let's get into it. So, the clean your chicken theory was something I came up with probably about 10 or 12 years ago. I was talking to a group of friends and the conversation turned to, do you clean your chicken? This has been a conversation I've probably had hundreds of times, and people are always taken aback when I go, no, I don't clean my chicken. I just want you to know, they're gonna take your black card before you finish this episode.
Hope I don't sound ridiculous. I don't know who this man is. I mean, he could be walking down the street. I wouldn't know a thing. Sorry to this man.
If you're black, you probably just recoiled in your seat. I get it, but hear me out. On this particular day, I felt like being a bit petty, because it always leads to the same questions and the same insults. Oh, you're nasty. How could you not clean your chicken? So I said to my friend, tell me something cleaning your chicken does that just cooking it won't do. And after some consternation, a little back and forth, and a lot of hand wringing, they finally admitted, okay, yeah, it doesn't really do anything. Exactly. So then I asked, why do you feel it's so important to do this thing that you factually know doesn't really do anything? And that led to a real conversation. It was tradition. It was culture. It was something their mom or auntie or grandmother had always done. And while I have no issue with doing something for cultural purposes, I think it's important to understand the costs. That's where the theory comes from. At its core, the clean your chicken theory is when we do something because it feels right, because it feels good, because we saw someone we love do it, even if it's pointless or maybe even harmful. And that brings me to the Met Gala.
Anna asked me what I wanted to wear, and she said you should wear like a black designer. So I wore myself. Everything is designed by yours truly.
This year's theme was black dandyism and fine tailoring. If you didn't know, black dandyism has long been a form of resistance and self-expression. From the 18th century onward, black folks have used fashion to assert dignity and challenge societal norms. For legends like Frederick Douglass and W.E.B. Du Bois, these weren't just suits. This was their armor in a world that didn't respect them and very often wanted to do them harm. In the 60s, legends like Dapper Dan were designing some of the most unbelievable fits as a form of cultural identity and defiance. And during the Harlem Renaissance, fashion was a language, a declaration of presence, of excellence. But the question that kept circling for me was this: why did they feel the need to wear these kinds of clothes? And then I realized they were copying, at least at the foundation, the suits of the wealthy white men they saw. They added their own twist. That twist became dandyism. But the inspiration came from power, from whiteness, from the desire to be accepted. We all should ask, what did that say about the society they lived in, that even Frederick Douglass had to put on a three-piece suit to be seen, heard, and respected by only an evolved few of that era? So then I took that thought back further to the original place and time black people were allowed to look their best. Sundays at church, our Sunday best. We dressed up for church, the one space where we could feel free, where we could present ourselves at our best. But what God were we dressing for? What building were we walking into? Slaves were only allowed to read one book, the Bible, and even then, only the parts they wanted us to see, the ones that preached obedience, not liberation. Back where we came from, we didn't need pews or pulpits. We danced in circles, we drummed, we prayed with rhythm and movement and connection. We didn't need a single book to tell us how to reach spirit. But once we were stolen, we were given their God and told that that was the only God we were allowed. Let's be honest. If the man whipping your back and raping your grandmother gives you a book, Do you really believe it's what's best for you? That brings me to the movie Sinners. I think many of us would agree it's the movie of the year. But what struck me was the visual representation of hoodoo and how it was used by our ancestors to spiritually connect. Not infused, but in practice. Not in silence, but in sound. Sinners presented one of the most grounded and respectable versions of our ancestors' traditions. Nonetheless, those ancestors held on to what their enslavers gave them, because it was the only freedom we had. One day a week we could be clean, we could wear our best, we could pretend we were whole. And now, over a century later, we have A$AP Rocky, Rihanna, Coleman Domingo, and Law Roach co-chairing the Met Gala alongside Anna Wintour. The tastemakers of our generation, our best and brightest, finally getting a seat at the table. But let's not forget, the Met Gala itself was founded by Eleanor Lambert in 1948, a woman who helped shape American fashion's elite, but who also curated it for whiteness. It was created to raise money for the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Costume Institute, a place that for decades barely acknowledged Black influence in fashion. So yes, we've arrived. But we arrived at a place that was never built for us. And if you know us, we showed up, we showed out, and we looked incredible. But at the core of it, I still had to ask, are we still performing for the approval of our oppressors? We dressed up for Sunday, then we dressed up for respect. Now we're dressing up for the Met. Even Beyonce, who didn't attend the Met Gala, one of the greatest performers to ever live, had to make a country album to get a Grammy for Album of the Year. A genre that started with us, co-opted, diluted, and turned into something we now have to earn our way into. And sure, we should celebrate her for reclaiming it, but we also have to ask why we're still seeking that approval in the first place. What if instead of chasing acceptance, we elevated what we already built? What if the BET Awards or the Essence Awards became our Grammys? Why do we treat our institutions like second-class versions of theirs, when we made them with our hands, our minds, and our culture? I'll leave you with this. Back in the 90s, when I was a kid in Brooklyn, there was a saying, "Yo, my name ring bells." That was how you let people know you had reputation, you were known, you mattered. I remember the first time someone said it to me without even thinking. I shot back, "Yeah, but does it open doors?" Today, the names of our best and brightest do ring bells. But if we still have to perform to get a seat at the table, do they really open doors? So let's talk about merit. The idea that if you're smart enough, qualified enough, work hard enough, that you'll rise, that the system will recognize your value, that you will earn your spot. But here's the thing. If merit is the key, why do so many people feel the need to hide who they are just to use it? I want to talk about names, about language, about identity, and how too often we trade parts of ourselves to gain entry into rooms that tell us merit is enough. Take Ted Cruz, born Raphael, the senator from Texas, or Nikki Haley, born Nimrata. The list is long and the pattern is familiar. Make it sound more American, more palatable, more electable. And the Republican Party is far from the only space where this happens. In entertainment, it's constant. In corporate America, it's expected. I have Asian friends whose parents gave them American names the moment they landed. We code switch, we adapt, we survive. But when the same people who made those changes for proximity to power turn around and marginalize others doing the same out of necessity, that's where the hypocrisy becomes dangerous. Let's be honest. Assimilation feels like safety, but very often it's 1,000 tiny cuts to the soul. It's losing parts of your name, your voice, and your truth. Culture is like branding. A company that abandons its identity to chase trends usually fails. Remember when The Gap teamed up with Yeezy, Kanye West, and still forgot who they were? We all know how that went and how it worked out ultimately for The Gap. Same goes for people. You might succeed, but you create a glass ceiling because it's hard to be authentic to the world when you exist inauthentically within yourself. I remember as a teen getting told by other Black kids that I sounded white. As an adult, no one says it to my face anymore. Maybe it's the beard, maybe it's the frame. I'm 6'4", 260. Try me if you want. But the thought still lingers. I've always been aware of how I speak. I don't have a degree, so I've had to be intentional about how I present. The articulation, the cadence, the comfort in a room. But today I'm unapologetically myself because not doing so caused an internal conflict I could no longer live with. I would rather limit my success than limit my wholeness. So how did we get here? Why is identity such a battleground? Because we were sold the myth of meritocracy in a system built on proximity. Because when a system is designed for scarcity, we're taught to fight for scraps, to view someone else's progress as our loss. And here's the brilliance of it. The people at the top don't even have to swing, they just point. And we go after each other. That's why DEI policies get treated like theft. That's why sharing space feels like losing ground. But let me offer a different lens. Have you ever seen a curb cut? You know, you're crossing the street, you get to the corner of the street you're on, and there's a bit of a slope. That little slope in the sidewalk was created for wheelchair access. It wasn't built for you if you were an able-bodied individual. But if you've ever pushed a stroller, pulled a suitcase, or rolled your ankle, it helped. Systems that create equity help more than just the people they were designed for. We say merit should be enough. But if you had to change your name, change your voice, change your hair, or your truth to access the room, was it merit that got you in, or a costume? I'm not here to judge survival. I'm here to challenge the systems, and I'm here to ask the question. If you say merit is what matters, why wasn't your real self good enough? Maybe the problem isn't identity. Maybe the problem is who we believe deserves to have one. I usually build these episodes a couple weeks ahead to give myself some space, but sometimes after recording, something keeps tugging at me. So I started doing this, just one more minute of context or nuance to close the loop. Give me a minute. Clock starts now. This merit talk, it's loud right now because DEI made some folks uncomfortable. Every time it comes up, you hear the same stories. Some white guy got passed over or said something out of line, got disciplined, and now he's a cautionary tale. And sure, some trainings were clumsy, some rollouts were awkward, but since when do we throw out a whole idea just because the first draft was messy? We've given grace to worse. Church is still trying to outrun scandal, democracy barely living up to its brochure. And capitalism. People die so insurance companies can profit. Kids go to bed hungry. Drugs that cost $10 are sold for thousands. We accept all that and still say it just needs work. But DEI? The moment it makes someone uncomfortable, it's shut it down. There are 200 million white people in this country. That's not judgment, that's math. And humans lean toward the familiar, not evil, just evolutionary. DEI isn't punishment, it's pause, it's balance. You've made room for systems that hoard power and profit. Why not for one that's just asking us to share?